with Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker set to release nationwide this week, and J.J. Abrams being the director to not only start and end the sequel trilogy, but as well the entire Skywalker saga in general. And that's got me thinking lately, because of course, things could have been a lot more different than what we'll be getting on Friday. As in case for anyone who didn't know or what I'm talking about, J.J. Abrams, believe it or not, was never the original director for Rise of Skywalker, before then only known as Episode 9. Rather, it was actually Colin Trevorrow for most of the sequel trilogy's lifespan, where he spent 2 years on the project. But in September of 2017, only months before The Last Jedi was released in theaters, he was unceremoniously removed from the film and replaced by none other than J.J. Abrams. Of course, having been fired so late into the process, Trevorrow had already the entire movie mapped out of co-writer Derek Connolly, even speaking to several of the lead actors on what they should expect to see in his final chapter to the Skywalker saga. However, Disney ultimately didn't agree with the direction and saw it right to replace him, with J.J. Abrams rewriting the story from scratch. But that's not to say he didn't take some inspiration from Trevorrow's Episode 9 script as well, which is why I thought it would be interesting to take a look back at Trevorrow's version of Episode 9 and see how much it differed or will differ from Rise of Skywalker once we all see it this week. However, because of the general secrecy behind Trevorrow's script, we can't dive in completely into what his version to the end of the Skywalker saga looked like. But at the same time, we do know of at least 8 different things that were officially in Trevorrow's script and which we'll be looking in this video. So enough of that, let's jump in. Number 1. Luke Skywalker having a main role in Episode 9. It's no surprise that neither Mark Hamill nor a good portion of fans were pleased with the portrayal of Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi. And how could you not blame them? Luke was basically used as a prop in the final minutes of The Force Awakens, and acted like a completely different person in The Last Jedi, with Mark Hamill even dubbing him as Jake Skywalker. Luke, for the most part, was made to look like an unlikable character, to of course not take away any attention from the new cast of characters like Rey. Granted, Rian Johnson did slightly do some justice to Luke at the very end, with him getting arguably one of the best looking scenes in the entire movie. Unfortunately, despite that, we still didn't get any lightsaber on lightsaber battle due to him being a force projection. And then of course, after all of that, Luke is then killed off, also killing any chance of Luke appearing in Episode 9 as the badass Luke many fans had wanted to see in the sequel trilogy. It's been documented plenty of times that Mark Hamill fundamentally disagreed with the direction Rian Johnson took with Luke here, although in the end he had no choice but to remain professional and do his job as an actor. Fortunately, despite having nothing but disagreements with his role with J.J. Abrams or Rian Johnson, Mark Hamill found common ground with the then Episode 9 director Colin Trevorrow, who, unlike those before him, actually had big plans for Luke Skywalker in the final chapter of the saga.
How much of Luke Skywalker did you discuss with Colin Trevorrow?
I had discussions with Colin, and I was very excited because we were on the same page in terms of where we wanted to go and how we wanted to see Luke in a way we've never seen him, even in this current version. But I don't know what went on. I don't want to know because there's no upside to that story. I mean, I like all those people. I like Kathy and I like Lawrence Kasdan and all the people that were involved in that decision. But sometimes ignorance is bliss, and they don't tell me anything.
Due to Carrie Fisher's passing, Trevorrow wanted Hamill's Luke to take the main role of Episode 9, with many rumors even saying that he wanted to bring Luke back to life, and that was something he constantly fought for against Kathleen Kennedy. This is also unofficially believed to be one of the primary reasons on why Trevorrow was eventually removed from the project, and replaced by JJ, who, like Johnson and Kennedy, wanted to keep Luke dead. Interestingly enough, Mark Hamill even jokes around with the idea of Luke being alive that Trevorrow and him supposedly had spoken about, but then confirms that JJ scrapped that idea entirely.
Who's to say I just didn't force project somewhere else? So we shall see. I mean, I think I said that to JJ and he said, no, you're dead. Just cut me off at the knees.
Number 2, Palpatine. Known now as the main villain of The Rise of Skywalker, and even claimed by both J.J. Abrams and Kathleen Kennedy that it was always in the plan to bring him back to conclude the saga, the reality behind this, however, is very different. Because, at least according to Trevorrow, this was never the intention for Episode 9, and if it was, then he was never told about it. As Trevorrow told Empire Online when asked about Palpatine, it was simply something that he never considered. Bringing back the Emperor was an idea JJ brought to the table when he came on board. It's honestly something I never considered. I commend him for it. This was a tough story to unlock and he found the key. And yeah, if you can figure out a good enough reason to explain Palpatine's return, then it's hard to argue against having Palpatine as the end-all be-all villain for the saga. Of course, that all remains to be seen how JJ's execution of that will look like in Rise of Skywalker. Number 3, the original Episode 9 villain. As mentioned before, unlike JJ's claims for Palpatine being the planned villain for Episode 9, the truth is that was never the case, and Trevorrow had something completely different in mind. Based on what we know, the original main villain for Episode 9 was weaker than Palpatine, and that's because they were still considered to be an apprentice. Unfortunately, there aren't any official details about this apprentice other than they were Snoke's second apprentice next to Kylo Ren. They were even referenced in both the Force Awakens visual dictionary and then later in the Last Jedi official collector's edition book, which already had fans talking and speculating back since 2015, with the idea always being that we would see this apprentice in Episode 9. It's assumed that with the death of Snoke, the Apprentice would have returned from their mission after learning that Kylo Ren had betrayed their master, and most likely tried to defeat Kylo to avenge Snoke. Some rumors, for example from Making Star Wars, even said that the Apprentice was a female Darksider, which would have been extremely interesting to see as we've never seen one on film before. As for their lightsaber, it was believed to function kind of like a switchblade, which JJ of course took into the Rise of Skywalker to have Dark Rey wield, who herself is likely to be inspired by this mysterious apprentice. Although, as we all know, JJ scrapped the idea entirely of Snoke's other apprentice making an appearance in the film in favor for Palpatine. And while some may like JJ's final decision better, it does make us question if we'll ever see that other apprentice show up. We certainly know that they're canon as they were referenced in canon material, so if we won't see them in the film, then there's definitely room for them to make an appearance in a Disney Plus show or most likely in the comics. And honestly, I'm a fan of the idea of having another apprentice as the new villain, especially since it would have worked perfectly for the sequel trilogy, as I made a video a while back explaining the sequel trilogy is basically the trilogy of the apprentices. So by Trevorrow keeping it at that level, it would have beautifully continued the theme of the sequel trilogy. Number 4, the Sith Troopers. First unveiled at Comic-Con 2019 and then marketed as the First Order's most elite soldiers under the command of Kylo Ren, they're actually in fact one of the most recognizable elements that JJ took from Trevorrow's Episode 9 script. Except there, they weren't called Sith Troopers. Now, while we don't know the name that Trevorrow had given them in his script, we do know why he put them in the movie, and that was because there would be a civil war between the First Order. So Trevorrow wanted one set of stormtroopers to be red to differentiate them from the white stormtroopers. As for details about the First Order Civil War itself, then again, we don't know that information. But it wouldn't surprise me if it was Hux attempting to fight back against Kylo's First Order, especially while he may be preoccupied with dealing with Snoke's other apprentice. Number 5, the TIE Echelon. Known by many now as a simple prop in Disney's Galaxy's Edge, the TIE Echelon in reality came from Trevorrow's script for Episode 9. Currently in canon, the Echelon is now seen as a simple troop transport and no longer appearing in Rise of Skywalker. However, Trevorrow intended much more for them, instead having the Echelon be used as a special operations transport for the First Order's finest, most likely fighting those for Kylo against the Red Stormtroopers as mentioned before. Number 6. Rey and Poe. Like with Rian Johnson requesting JJ to include R2-D2 over BB-8 in Rey's hike on Ahch-To to meet Luke at the end of The Force Awakens, Colin Trevorrow also asked Johnson if he would include a scene in The Last Jedi of Poe and Rey meeting each other on film. This was because Trevorrow had planned for Rey and Poe to be closer in his Episode 9. As for whether he intended on a romantic relationship between the two, then that still remains unknown. In his comment on Empire Online, he said this: "I just asked Rian if he could include a little moment where Rey and Poe meet for the first time. They're such beloved characters, it felt right for them to have some history in the next movie. I thought the way he did it was perfect." Number 7. Rey's story. While we still have yet to find out how Rey's story ends in JJ's Rise of Skywalker, it's safe to assume it may not be anywhere near as sensitive as Trevorrow's version of it was. This is because when asked about Trevorrow's ending for Rey, Daisy Ridley had quite an emotional reaction to it. According to Book of Henry actor Bobby Monahan, Trevorrow had told Ridley Rey's fate in his version of Episode 9, and upon hearing it, she burst into tears. Now, whether those were sad or happy tears, we don't know. But it sounds like Trevorrow's version had a very emotional ending in mind for Rey's arc, likely more than JJ's, as we've never heard of Daisy Ridley say once that she cried at how Rey's story ends in Rise of Skywalker. Number 8. LEIA. Trevorrow has said that Princess Leia was going to be a major character in Episode 9, which makes plenty of sense. The Force Awakens focused the most on Han Solo, meanwhile The Last Jedi on Luke Skywalker. So of course, naturally, Episode 9 would feature Leia on the forefront of things. But like in JJ's Rise of Skywalker, even if he would have stayed on as director, that was bound to have changed in some way. Now, whether he would have handled it the same way that JJ did, then that we'll never know. While Colin Trevorrow was removed from Episode 9, we can still see that some of his ideas very much did contribute to the final Rise of Skywalker script, such as the Red Stormtroopers as Sith Troopers, the other Apprentice's Switchblade-style lightsaber, and the female Darksider in Dark Rey. So much so that Trevorrow is still receiving a story by credit for Rise of Skywalker, along with his script co-writer Connolly and the two brought in to replace them, J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio. Although Trevorrow has stated that he's going to donate all of his residuals from the film, as he didn't get to direct it. Personally, I would have loved to see Colin Trevorrow's take on the end of the saga. You could tell this guy is a genuine fan and how much respect he has for the legacy characters and George Lucas himself, which the comment he made to Empire Online last year really resonates that. As when speaking about the Star Wars franchise as a whole, he said, "But they're not just movies, they're more than that. Beyond that, I got the opportunity to tell a story that is a celebration of everything I believe in. I got to tell it to George Lucas, and I got to tell it to Luke Skywalker. And those are experiences I will cherish for the rest of my life." I mean, this is a guy in his 40s who refers to Mark Hamill as the Luke Skywalker in a professional interview. So based on that alone, you know just how much Luke meant to him growing up and how he wanted to give him justice in Episode 9. Unfortunately, we're never gonna get to see that. And all we really can hope for this point is that JJ's Rise of Skywalker will be that amazing celebration of everything Star Wars that Colin so passionately had wanted to give us. Whether that will be the case or not, we're all going to find out on Friday. And as always, be sure to like and share this video, as well to keep it here to Silo for everything on the latest in Star Wars. And 7 from Silo, signing out.